right, Jennifer Lee Chan is en route to Houston to cover the 49ers game Sunday against the Texans. And the 49ers do take a 5-2 record into this matchup as Kyle Shanahan and former 49ers defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans in his third year as the head coach of the Houston Texans. This will be the first matchup, Shanahan against DeMeco Ryans. And so let's bring you up to date on the 49ers injury situation. No big surprise. Brock Purdy is out again, so that means Mac Jones will step in. What'll this be? I'm losing track. I think it's his sixth start of the season, his fourth in a row. And I know there were some questions like, well, if Brock Purdy, if they knew he was going to miss 4 games, why didn't they just put him on injured reserve? I think a lot of that had to do with it's really a touch-and-go nature with that toe injury. 49ers weren't sure exactly how long he'll be out. A lot of it is just testing it, seeing where he is, and then just giving him a little bit more as his health allows. And at least through this point, being on injured reserve, Brock Purdy can still practice. So he's been going through limited practice, and I think it gives the 49ers a good baseline to just kind of see, to kind of track his progress. And as both John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have said, he is making steady progress. He's doing better this week than he did last week, but still not good enough to get out there. So the Mac Jones show continues for the 49ers, and Adrian Martinez, who is on the 53-man roster, he will once again serve as the backup to Mac Jones. Others who will not play in this game, Ricky Pearsall, that knee situation just hasn't come around. It's a non-surgical knee injury, posterior cruciate ligament, but just hasn't felt the stability that will allow him to get out there and practice and play. So he's out. Jake Brendel, starting center, is out with a hamstring injury. That means the first start for Matt Hennessy and a couple of defensive ends. Yetur Gross-Matos out with his hamstring, also has a knee, but he's been playing through the knee situation for a while. But he's out with a hamstring again, and then Bryce Huff with the hamstring. So the 49ers really face a challenge in this game, just being able to generate a pass rush against C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud has not been good, and I know most quarterbacks don't like to be pressured, but C.J. Stroud has really struggled against pressure, and the Houston Texans offensive line and their pass protection in general hasn't been good. So 49ers will need to generate some pass rush in order to throw C.J. Stroud off of his rhythm. The question is, with Bosa out for the season, with Bryce Huff now sidelined for probably a couple of weeks, those are the 49ers' 2 best sack artists. Where's it going to come from? Sam Okwanu, he has 1 sack on the season. Michael Williams has 1 sack on the season. That's it as far as the other defensive linemen who've gotten to the sack column. The 49ers' other sack from a player who will suit up for this game was from nickelback Upton Stout. And Upton Stout is fine to play in this game. He's not on the injury report. Renardo Green, he's not on the injury report either. So those guys are good to go, bouncing back into the lineup. As far as the players who are listed as questionable, Luke Gifford with the hamstring injury. He's a starting Sam linebacker and a special teams guy. Also, Diamador Lenore. He missed some practices during the week with a quad injury. It's not a quad strain, it's a quad contusion. So that's better news. All indications are that he'll be able to play. And another one who's questionable is Spencer Burford. He remains on injured reserve as he sustained an injury in week 2, was placed on injured reserve after that. So 49ers would have to make a roster move. And I would expect them to make a roster move on Saturday as far as elevating a player or 2 from the practice squad to be available, because 5 players being ruled out in this game leaves the 49ers a little bit shorthanded. Teams can only suit up 48 players, but they did activate Robert Beal from the practice squad this week, so he'll be in uniform. The question is, are they going to activate another defensive end? Maybe somebody like Travis Gibson, who was on the 53-man, got bumped down to the practice squad. They could still bring him back up if they so desire. So on this episode of 49ers Talk, we'll get you ready for kickoff, what should be an interesting game. 2 teams that 49ers have one of the top offenses in the league in yards gained per game. powered mostly by the passing game, although the running game still is starting to show some signs, or not starting. It really showed signs in the 49ers 20-10 victory over the Atlanta Falcons behind Christian McCaffrey. Everything just seemed to be clicking better with the timing of the running game. And that's something I wanted to ask Kyle Shanahan about, just kind of the mechanics of the running game. If he feels like now that portion of the 49ers offense has been unlocked a little bit. So we got a lot to talk about. 49ers, can they keep that run game going against a very good Houston Texans defense? They need to run the ball effectively. They need to avoid the negative plays. And I know that sounds very cliche and very obvious, but with their pass rush, with the Texans pass rush, 49ers cannot be in third and longs a whole lot in this game. So I'll talk to Kyle Shanahan about that coming up on the 49ers game plan interview. Some of the challenges that face Robert Saleh on the other side of the ball as far as generating their own pass rush and making sure that this is not the game that CJ Stroud finds his rhythm and gets that offense going. Also just going up against DeMeco Ryans, the former 49ers defensive coordinator. This will be the first time that Shanahan has gone up against him. And boy, he does have a very stout defense with the Houston Texans, still trying to find the right answers, though, for that offense. Also want to get into a little bit of philosophy or just how Kyle Shanahan goes about certain things, his interaction with Christian McCaffrey during the course of the week, his interaction with Robert Saleh during the course of the week, and also when you haven't faced a team a whole lot like this Houston Texans team, 49ers have not played them since late in the 2021 season. What is the process to familiarize yourself with the scheme and the personnel? Maybe less so with the scheme because 49ers know, Kyle Shanahan knows exactly where DeMeco Ryans is as far as his upbringing in the game and the principles that he tries to apply to his defense. But just what is the general process that he uses, Kyle Shanahan, in starting to game plan against an opponent? So we'll do all that. We'll talk to Kyle Shanahan. We'll talk to Greg Bethune, father of Tatum Bethune, to get his insights. And he's a really interesting guy and shares some really cool things about his life as a youth football coach, more than 20 years in Southern Florida. So got a great episode of 49ers Talk coming up, and we'll kick it off with Kyle Shanahan on 49ers game plan. All right, Kyle, this season you've won games where you've thrown the ball 49 times. Last week you won a game where you ran the ball 39 times. What kind of dictates what direction the game goes from an offensive play caller standpoint that you see fit as the best way to win a game?
Well, I mean, every game I go into, like it really is balanced. Like we do an opening 24. I've never not had it 12 runs and 12 passes. I always try to keep it balanced. Now that takes out all third downs. It takes out 2 minute. It takes out the red zone. So it rarely does end up exactly balanced. But I believe if you go and look at first and second down normal situations, even in the game we threw it 49 times, I bet it looks close to 50-50. And I think that's the Rams game, and I think we had 33 runs in that game. So how do you have 33 runs, 49 passes? Well, it came a time there in the second half, we had ran it most of that game, not running it well, but I knew if we threw it too much, their pass rush was too good, which eventually leads to sacks or it eventually leads to turnovers. So I'm calling runs 50-50 just to make them honor it. But there came a time in that second half when their offense was going and where I realized that we could have messed around and run the ball, so I picked up the passes. Then we also had 2 2-minute drives in that game. And then in overtime, I don't think I ran it. And so at the end, it gets pretty skewed. But you still get those 33 runs. So really to answer your question, I'm always trying to get balanced. But by the time you get to the second half, you got a feel of the whole game, not just the offense versus defense, but the whole game. And once that happens, you do whatever it takes to win. And that can be different every week. It has to do with the moment in which you've accumulated over those 2 hours.
Yeah, that Sunday night game, you did run the ball more effectively than you have at any point this season. Did you feel like that area of the team, that area of the offense kind of became unlocked and something that you can do more successfully going forward?
Yeah, I think that was the first time this year that we ran the ball and dictated the defense. We've ran the ball in terms of getting the carries and stuff, but we haven't had the production, and that's because I don't think we've had a lot of success. We haven't had the big plays running the ball. So I think in most of this year we've been running it to stay balanced. In that game, we ran it to control the game, which was a hard thing to do, but we did. The reason I said it to the team the night before is because I believed we had an opportunity to. The way they played defense, the way I thought it was matched up, I thought we would have an op to do that. But it was really dictated on how the defense could play also. I was worried with their offense being so good, our first game without Fred, that if things did get bad and they got up a couple scores, I was going to regret telling our team that, because it was going to get a time in that second half where I was going to have to abandon that and not do what I said my goal was to do. And that always sucks, because you get to the end of the game and like, what the hell, coach? You said 40 runs and you only ran it 23 times. So that's why we lost. So I can't say, yeah, that's because the game changed. But I wanted it to be that way, and the way our defense was playing, the way that second half was, and the way we ran the ball, and what we did on third down and stuff, it allowed us to stick with it, and that's why I was truly just proud of the whole team being able to do that.
7 games in, has your thought about what it takes for this team to win games changed from what you thought it would be at the beginning, or is that something that's always evolving as the year goes on?
I think it's always evolving. I mean, going into this year, and I didn't think we'd be able to rely on one side of the ball. I knew we had a lot of young guys on defense, but I also knew we had a lot of new guys and guys who hadn't been around on offense too. I thought it was going to have to be a very balanced team and a team win throughout this. And as we did that throughout the year, I thought we could get stronger in a lot of areas, get some guys back on offense, get better, more mature on defense. But that's why I was so impressed with the guys in those first wins, because we just found ways to get it done. And then as that's happened, we've lost a number of guys, which makes you have to adjust even more, which happens every year. But you try to figure it out, and then however it is, you have a philosophy, but you watch tape on Monday and Tuesday, think how you want the game to go. You put a plan throughout the week, and Sunday, hey, sometimes it unfolds that way, but usually it unfolds a different way, and you got to react.
Your offense, your running game, very detail-oriented. Does it take a while with the offensive line, the wide receivers, the tight ends, the running backs, to sync that up and get the timing the way you want it in the run game?
Oh, yeah, I think it takes as much work as anything. That's why I'm so big on trying to get the NFL to allow people to practice run plays in the offseason.
With tackling?
Yeah, tackling and actually being able to touch each other like you do in basketball, but you can't do it sometimes in football in the offseason. So that makes it hard to run, but that's why training camp's so important, because you're really only getting 3 weeks of practice before you do an NFL season. And I'd like to say, it takes time throughout the season, but I think we've been able to get that done and come out pretty strong. I think one area that was harder for this year was the turnover at our receivers. Just for these first 5 weeks, just having receivers who weren't here in training camp and things like that. And I think that sounds a little bit weird when you talk run game, but I think our wideouts dictate the run game a lot. What we do with our formations, how good those guys block. They don't always dictate the 4 or 5 yard runs, but they dictate the 15 to 25 yard runs, which to me is what changes the game. And the more consistent you can get those guys tied to everyone else, the more you can get our O-line consistent. Getting guys back out there also depends on a lot who you go against, but all those things go into play there.
Christian McCaffrey is a very smart running back, knows the game very well, and I know you have a lot of time constraints during the week, but do you get a chance much to talk to him, talk ball with him during the week, and just kind of get his thoughts or exchange ideas on a game plan that's coming up?
Yeah, I mean, Christian, he wants to talk ball all the time. So if he has a question about something, where if he sees me right there, he'll do it. He'll text me, he'll call me. He always wants to talk ball. My main time with them and talking ball is Fridays. I usually go through the whole run game plan on Friday mornings with the guys. We do a big run tape. It's about 45 minutes long, and that's where I kind of talk to the whole offense about the run game. And I have Chris Forrester, Brian Fleury. Those guys set that up for me, and then that's really where kind of we detail everything out. We install it on Wednesday, do some new things on Thursday. You get those 2 practices in, but Friday is really where I kind of tell them where I'm planning to go with it. And we do that off of practice tape. We do it off of game tape and kind of really show everything. And usually after that, I get a bunch of questions too.
So there was a sequence in the game Sunday night where you're facing a 3rd and 13, and Christian's coming off the field. You get him back on the field, and it ends up being a 17-yard gain and a first down, setting up his short touchdown run. So what was going on behind the scenes there with that situation late in the game?
It was just, we knew how badly we wanted a touchdown so we could make it a 2-score game. And I can't think of what happened, whether we got a penalty or not the play before, but it got into that 3rd and long. And it's hard to move the chains on 3rd and 10 plus. Guys play certain coverages that usually makes you check it down. I think it was 3rd and 13. But we had a specific play that we ended up finding that Tuesday that was in that part of the field that we were so excited to call on 3rd and long because we felt it was a good play for their coverage. But it was specifically for Christian if we got that look. He was the only one we practiced at it. He was the only one we asked to do this. And fortunately, I hadn't used it all game. We hadn't been in a 3rd and long. And it just happened that spot, it was the first 3rd and long in the game. I would have used it in the first quarter if that was our first 3rd and 15 or whatever. But we had it right then. It was actually the most important 3rd down of the game. And so it hit me so fast, like, oh, awesome, we still have this play for this moment. And right when I was calling it, he was walking off the field saying he needed one. And whenever he says he needs one because Christian's not taking himself out unless he's gassed or hurt. And so right when I did that, I was just like, no, you can't. And when he turns and runs back in, I'm like, unless you're hurt. But he can't hear me say that. Like, I don't want to sit him back in if he's hurt. But if he's just gassed, I know he can suck it up for this one more play, especially if he knows what I'm calling. And that's what he did. And ran a hell of a route. Mac made a hell of a throw. And it's one of the reasons why we were able to breathe easy in that last minute of the game.
When you sent him back, do you think he knew automatically what the play call was?
He knew it was going to him. I think once he heard the formation, he knew right away. And he's like, all right, I'm glad he sent me back.
Okay, so you obviously wanted Robert Saleh from the moment last season ended. And I mean, you knew there were going to be a lot of new faces, a lot of real coaching, detailed coaching going on with that defense. But with so many moving parts right now, how do you guys work the process of you and him talking about what's going on defense? What's your process like for just communicating with him during the week as far as what the plan is going to be?
I think the biggest thing is how much work we put in together this offseason. Just having an idea what this season was going to be like, even talking to him on the phone in January, going through the process where we had to take some time before we got him out here because he was going through his head coach interviews, which I was supporting to his face, but I was really hoping he didn't get them because I wanted him to come here pretty bad. So it worked out for us. But we were talking about that stuff all the time. And then right when he got in the building in February, we were discussing it. After free agency, getting the true wake-up call that we knew was coming, but it still hurt. We're losing all those guys, preparing for the draft and how the season was going to go. So all that stuff we've been talking about nonstop. It was tough when we lost Fred, obviously, and really tough when we lost Nick. So those are things that you don't count on and you're hoping don't happen. But we knew that this season wasn't going to go perfect with injuries. We knew there was going to be a lot of young guys. So it's so cool they got so many reps in the offseason, so they had a chance for these moments. But during the week, it's more about me talking to Saleh about things that give us problems, things I think give them problems. Saleh's got to put together a plan that works for him, that works for our defense, that works for our personnel. And you can't always use that plan as people get hurt. So you got to do different things. And I think that's where Saleh and I enjoy talking to each other because he likes hearing my perspective of football coming from my angle, which is a little bit different. And he's a guy who knows a lot about football, but he's coming from a different angle than I come from. And sometimes we see things differently, but we can always understand each other. And usually that makes us both better in our own ways.
You guys have a set time every week that you sit down and talk?
No, we're not very calculated like that, especially me. It's pretty impulsive. I'll just see something, I'll scream. I don't text. I just yell Saleh, and he can hear me, and he comes down to my office, or sometimes I'll hear him yell my name, and sometimes I'll get up and walk down there. Sometimes I'll ignore it. We'll go in each other's offices usually before we leave at night just to see what's going on, how something went, and usually when we do that, I'll tell my wife home I'm about to leave in 5 minutes, but I stop by there and I don't leave for an hour and a half. So but that's usually how it works. We're in this building all the time, and except when we go home to sleep. So we talk many times throughout the day.
You mentioned Tatum Bethune stepping in and playing very well against the Falcons. Again, behind the scenes, what Johnny Holland, your linebackers coach, I know someone you have deep admiration for. What was his role in making sure, not just last week, but just in the year plus that you've had Tatum? What's Johnny's role been in getting Tatum Bethune ready and all the backup linebackers ready for that moment when they're called upon?
Johnny's amazing with that stuff. He's just done it with so many different guys. Obviously here, it's been unbelievable, but other places in his career. The first time I met Johnny, it was our first year at Houston, and when we drafted a rookie linebacker in DeMeco. So Johnny's been through this for so long. He's got such wisdom. He's a very wise guy in terms of how long. I always call him the Bobby Turner of the defense. He's always going to take a guy on the side, talk to him, connect with him on his own. makes Tatum break the team down, makes him do things that he made Fred do. He's always taking pictures of guys in the offseason, showing them how their body looks now and how it's going to look next year, what Fred was here, what he's going to be in year 2, year 3. And he's got all these programs with these guys that is so much more than this season. And it's a program that for them starts in February and goes all the way through the season. And he's so close with those guys. He builds them not just in football but in life, and truly teaches them how to be a full circled man in terms of off the field, on the field, and that's why he's the best.
One of the themes of this season so far has been just how the backups have stepped in and played so well. I was talking to Matt Hennessy, and I asked him about that. He said that he felt like that whole mindset was really established during OTAs with the amount of participation in the offseason program, that right then and there that unity really was formed, and the backups all got that sense of what it's going to take, what everybody has to do, kind of that responsibility for when the backups numbers are called. Was that, I know you really stressed full participation in the offseason program. Is that kind of the sense you get as well?
Yeah, I big time, because there wasn't any like starters or backups this offseason, and that's how you won it, and that's how we've had it for a while. But when you go to the Super Bowl or something, you don't finish playing until February. You get guys back in the office in May. Some of those guys that just had the longest year, their energy level isn't quite the same as, a rookie coming in or a free agent or a second-year player who's just so eager to learn this offense or defense and get back into it. Where this year, I've made a big deal about talking about guys that this has nothing to do with years past. We're going to work day one. And it wasn't just the vets, but it was everybody kind of just seemed like the same person. There was no like, hey, we got to go for a few weeks and the starters are going to come in. Or then, hey, we're going to do some of this and then we'll get to training camp and they'll have those guys. And there really wasn't a difference between the 1s, the 2s, or the 3s. It was just a group of 90 people. All of them worked. All of them did everything. There wasn't anybody taking days off. And that's what was so cool when the rookies came in. They kind of just saw a group like this. And it was a rookie class I didn't really have to sit and talk to and be like, hey, you got to work like this is. There was no choice. The whole team was that way, and it was very consistent, and one of my favorite off seasons with the guys, and I think it's led into this year.
So your opponent this week, Houston Texans, DeMeco Ryans in his 3rd year as a coach. This week, this is what he had to say about you. He said, I remember sitting down in his office one day, and he told me, dude, you can be a head coach in this league. Can you describe what you saw as far as that it factor that DeMeco Ryans had?
It started with him as a player. He was different as a player. Anyone who can come in as a rookie, and be a team captain, be the rookie of the year. I think he was the first guy in like 15 years or something to start at the Pro Bowl over Ray Lewis, something like that. I might be messing that up. But it was just unbelievable. Like they called him Mufasa, like the lion and Lion King, because he was just so wise and stuff like that. And he was so young, but you could see that as a player. The 4 years I was with him, and then I had to go against him so much when he was at Philly and I was in Washington. So you just knew how he was out there and how he had such a natural feel for the game and how he carried himself. And then when he got into coaching, to see his work ethic, how he didn't say like, I was this as a player, so I can skip some things. I don't have to do that. He was extremely humble, wanted to learn it the right way, which is from the bottom up, and how fast he did it. He picked up things very fast as a coach, just like he did as a player. And when you have that kind of persona as a former player, when you carry yourself the way he does, when you are that good of a person, when you are that smart, when you do have that work ethic, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. I remember my dad telling me something like that when I was younger. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he was like, no, you'll see, but you do have the capability to do it. And that meant a lot to me when he said that to me, because I didn't have any clue what he was talking about. And I'm sure that's what DeMeco meant when I said that to him. But it was so obvious. He had all that stuff. And if he really wanted to do that, he just had to keep grinding like he was. And it was just a matter of time before that would happen for him.
Yeah, obviously, DeMeco very well. But the Texans, you guys haven't faced since late in the 2021 season. So when you face an AFC team that maybe you play once every 4 years, what is your process for when you start to game plan, or how you start to game plan against a team? Like, what are the first things that your eyes go to? Is it the scheme? Is it the personnel? What's your process like?
I always turn on the game that they played the day before. So I start on Monday and I always watch their most recent game. All I do is watch games all the way till Tuesday. I try to get every game in throughout their year. As it gets later, I can't watch 16 games in one day, so I'll pick like half of them. usually the most recent ones. But like right when I turn on the first play, I look at their personnel, just the names of everybody. I always have a sheet that shows the guys, and half those guys I'll know from college, half of them I'll know from evaluating college, half from free agency, half because I played against before. So you get an idea of the people out there. And then I watch scheme. I want to get their fronts, I want to get their coverages, and you just go in game order and you start to build it up in your head and see how it plays. As you do that, you notice all the personnel of the guys who are difference makers. Even though I'm watching scheme, the guys who jump off the tape and catch my eye, I know are the players. Usually it's a D lineman who jumps off. It might be a corner, but then you know those four guys. And then I go to the next game. And I have all these notes, but you see what changes, and you go backwards, and you're like, all right, well, that makes sense why they adjusted this, because that wasn't there last game, and it was open the game before, but they've corrected that mistake. And then I go to the next game, and I keep going back.
You go backward.
Yeah, I go backwards. Because I don't like starting forward, because you can see a lot of holes, and then you get to 3 weeks later, and those holes aren't there anymore. So I always go backwards to see what's changed, and I do that all Monday. And I got a good feel by some of the big-time players that we got to like really game plan around. And then Tuesday, and I just watch all cut-ups. I'll only watch 5 on the line. I'll only watch it with base personnel. I'll only watch it verse 21. I'll only watch it verse 11. You break up all those areas into the field and stuff that you have it from games, and then you try to see what's different when you really isolate and just watch it in one area. And then as the week goes, you notice more of the personnel. Hey, I only noticed these 3 guys, which we have to game plan around. But now that it's Friday, man, their weak side linebacker's a pretty good player. He's not like those other 3, but this dude has grown on me, and I see why he's hard to beat. I see why he's out there. So it takes all week, and then by the time you get to Saturday night, that's kind of the first time, like, everything is good, you understand it all, and you're ready to go on Sunday.
All right, so Mac Jones has been playing winning football for you. What does he have to do? Not to put it all on Mac's shoulders, of course, but what does Mac have to do, Mac and the offense have to do in order to come out of Week 8 here with a victory?
Yeah, well, it's they're going to be tested because this is a really good defense. Everyone talks about them. Their numbers are that, and it's what's advertised. DeMeco's got them playing at a very high level, very sound defense, but anytime you go against a defense who has extremely sound coverages, you want to know about their pass rush. Because sound coverages, it's tough to get big plays, but you usually can look people off and eventually get to a good hole. How does their pass rush allow you to do that? And they got the pass rush to go with it. So when you look at a quarterback in that situation, you got to make sure he's able to get rid of the ball. You got to make sure he's very conscientious of his depth and stuff, not just backpedaling and things like that. You got to step up in there because the edges are too short, which does put a lot of pressure on your guards. And you got to make sure that you take what the defense gives you. When you can get them to be a little aggressive, when we got a chance for a bigger play, that's when we have to be aggressive also. And you also got to make sure they are going to get after you at times. That pocket is going to collapse at times. I would love for you to get rid of the ball and get an incompletion, worst case scenario. Second worst thing to happen. But you got to make sure if it does collapse, you protect that ball and don't turn it over. Because this team is predicated on getting turnovers. They can cause them a lot, and their offense has struggled. But the one thing that will get their offense going is if we give them some freebies, whether it's 4 turnovers like happened the day before, or whether it's our special teams letting up a big play. We can't give their offense that confidence.
All right, Kyle. Thanks so much. Good luck on Sunday.
Thanks, Matt.
This portion of 49ers Talk is brought to you by Toyota, class-leading MPG and more hybrid models than any other brand. Toyota, let's go places. So let's go back to the 2024 NFL Draft and the 49ers' final pick at number 151 overall. They selected Tatum Bethune, a linebacker from Florida State. And I remember that night because I thought to myself, Bethune, well, that's an interesting name. And I immediately recalled someone I had met previously by the name of Greg Bethune, who was very close to the Bosa family. And during the lead up to the 2019 draft, I talked to Greg Bethune, a former coach of, well, he's still a coach, but he coached previously both of the Bosa boys, Nick and Joey. And I thought, yeah, the only other time I've heard that last name, other than Bethune-Cookman, the university, was Greg Bethune. And one quick Google search pulled up that Greg Bethune is, in fact, the father of Tatum Bethune. So kind of an interesting sidelight, or just something that I was able to draw on, just the coincidence, or maybe not coincidence, of Greg Bethune, the father of Tatum Bethune, who also had such a great influence on the Bosa boys. And anyway, with Tatum Bethune now in the starting lineup, taking over for Fred Warner at middle linebacker and playing very well in his first two games, especially the game Sunday night against the Atlanta Falcons, kind of helping hold down Bijan Robinson. Tatum Bethune had 10 tackles in that game. And it's something that he's going to have to do over and over and over again. And it's something that he did throughout his college career. A little bit under the radar, maybe a lot under the radar. 3 seasons at University of Central Florida, transferring to Florida State, and being somebody that was considered, either a late round pick or maybe a priority free agent heading into that 2024 draft. And now he is a guy that the 49ers are counting on to step in and play well. And I thought it'd be a really neat time to reach out again to Greg Bethune, Tatum's father, and kind of see where he is and kind of get his insights, not only on coaching the Bosa boys, specifically Nick, and Pendrick Pines Optimists, a football club there that the Bosas were very much involved with, but also his insights into his son, Tatum. So, the challenge continues this week as the Houston Texans. I know they're going to want to generate some running game that they weren't able to do up to this point in the season. The Houston Texans offense has struggled, and I would imagine they're going to make Tatum Bethune prove himself. So they're going to try to go after him. They're going to try to run the football between the tackles. And so a lot is on the plate of Tatum Bethune just merely stepping in for Fred Warner. But each week, I'm sure teams are going to be looking to game plan against him and see if they can somehow take advantage of his lack of experience at the NFL level. But a guy who has been a team captain, Tatum Bethune, a guy who leads by example, but also really knows the game of football. And where does that come from? That comes from his upbringing. That comes from his dad, Coach Greg Bethune. So here's my interview with Greg Bethune. All right, it is my pleasure to introduce and bring into 49ers Talk Greg Bethune. And Greg, obviously you're the father of Tatum Bethune, and I can tell that you're at a field right now that might have some historical significance for the 49ers. Can you tell me where you're at right now?
So I'm at Pembroke Pines Optimists, where I've been a coach here for 20 plus years. And I guess the historical perspective for the Niners is that this produced Nick Bosa and Tatum Bethune.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Okay, so I don't know if you remember this, but back in 2019, before that draft, I was doing a big story on Nick Bosa, and I asked the family, like, could you give me some people, some phone numbers, some contact information for
Yes.
individuals who've been, influential in Nick's life, and you were the number one person that they gave. So this is actually the second time or third time that we've spoken, but I want to go back to draft night. And you were invited into the green room when the 49ers selected Nick Bosa number 2 overall. And this is what Nick had to say about you then. He said about you, he had such a big impact on me. I love football because of him. I feel like when you're a kid, it's really important to have a really good coach because you can either start out loving it or you can start out being indifferent. Just having him start my career with a love for the game, that's continued throughout my life. So did you even know how influential you were with Nick Bosa?
I didn't know to that extent. I know that past his playing time with me, we remained very close with the family because I also coached Joey, which is his older brother. So, I knew we were close, but I didn't know that the impact was as profound as, he eloquently stated. So,
yeah, no, that's great. And so you were there in Nashville that night.
yes.
Was there any thought in your mind that a few years later, 5 years later, your son could have his name called in the NFL draft?
You know what? I know at that time, Tatum was very deep into football. And, we were trying to, get ready for like the college ranks. And when you play, it's always a hope or a dream in the back of your mind. But, I I never thought in a million years that I would be playing with Nick in San Francisco. So it's been definitely a blessing.
And you know, what Nick said about you, how important was that for you, not only with kids who weren't your son, but even your son, not to push football too hard, to let him enjoy it on his own and not see it as anything other than what it's supposed to be?
Well, you know, my mantra is that when we coach kids, we're not trying to coach football players. We're trying to raise responsible young men. You know, football is the only game, in my opinion, that parallels life the way it does. You know, you're going to face adversities. What are you going to do? You have the option of quitting or persevering or fighting through. We teach the young men that one day you're going to be somebody's husband, somebody's father, and it's important that the skills that you learn by playing in football that you can apply to your regular life. So for us, it's never about just football. It's about raising young men to be responsible and productive citizens after football.
Is that something that, you said you've been coaching there for a couple decades? Is that something that have you kind of tailored the message through the years? Are you constantly evolving as a coach to figure out how to best attract those young men?
No, the thing about football is the basics about football is blocking, tackling, and knowing your assignment. And it's the same message from us as far as our mission for these young men. Everybody that we coach is not going to be a professional football player, but they're all going to grow up and be young men. So the message is always going to be that. If I stop coaching today, that will be the message. And if I coach another 10 years, it's going to be the same message.
And you have a history. You're an administrator, educator in Miami-Dade schools, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what your role has been there through the years?
Well, I've started out as a teacher, of course, naturally, and then I moved up to an assistant principal, and I was a principal for 11 years, 9 of those years at Miami Central Senior High School. And then now I'm an administrative director where I oversee 114 schools in the Dade County area.
Wow. And also there's a background of a college, a well-known college, right? Bethune-Cookman. Can you tell me about the family ties there?
Yeah, so just briefly, we're related to Mary McLeod Bethune, who founded Bethune-Cookman University, as it's called today. Back then, it was Bethune-Cookman College, and we're proud of that heritage. We're proud of that lineage, and we strive every day to uphold, those principles of education first and all of the things that we do.
How do you see Tatum, his background with the family, the values, the emphasis on education, how do you see that relate to him as a football player?
Well, he knows that, and they all knew. I have 3 sons and 1 daughter, and they all participated in athletics and activities, and they knew it was books first. The extracurricular activities were sort of a reward. So he knows the value of it, but what's translated over is the study, the attention to detail that he has to pay to his preparation for football is the same way he had to prepare for school. If he had tests or he had assignments that he had to do, there was never a last-minute situation. It was always, we have to prepare for this ahead of time, and it's translated over in his preparation for football.
Was there a point in whether his high school career or his college career at University of Central Florida or later at Florida State where you thought, okay, he's on the path, he can play in the NFL?
Well, we always talked about the defining moment. They're going to be defining moments in your life that's going to let you know, whether you can play in that league. And I can say that defining moment for him probably came once he got to the league. But he's always prepared himself. He's always worked harder than everybody else because he was always, overlooked. People never really gave him the credit he deserved, or they found a reason to knock him because he was my son. He was the principal's son. So, of course, he wasn't supposed to be that great. He didn't have a flashy nickname or have some machine behind him pushing his name. So he took the long road, the blue-collar road. But that's what made him the way he is now. That's why he's callous to a lot of things. He can exist above the noise, and he's always going to thrive in those situations because nothing came for him easy.
Were you in Tampa Bay at that game?
Yes.
And what was your thought when the horrible incident happened and Fred Warner was injured?
Well, for my first thoughts and prayers went out to Fred because he's been a tremendous, I want to say friend, but like mentor to Tatum. That was my first thought. And then, I said a prayer for Tatum to make sure that, God protected him and covered him while he was out there. And the football part is always going to take care of itself. We have a discussion all the time about prepare like you're the starter because you're just an injury away from being it. And it happened. So I wasn't nervous about his preparation. I wasn't nervous about his performance because at every level he's performed. And when his time is called, he's always ready.
Yeah, and that first start coming on Sunday night football, national television audience against the Atlanta Falcons. Were you able to make it to Santa Clara for that game, or did you watch it on TV?
No, I didn't make it. I was trying to sneak in and surprise him, but I had a meeting that I couldn't get out of on Monday for such late notice. So I wasn't able to come.
I know one of the things that Coach Kyle Shanahan said was that, with the week of practice and being buttoned up on the assignments and seeing it play out on the practice field the way it would play out in the game, that was going to be a huge benefit for Tatum. Is that how you saw it too, as far as just the level of his preparedness for that game?
When I talked to him throughout the week, the level of confidence he had in his voice, the things that we spoke about in private, I can always tell when he's ready. And pregame warm-ups, I can watch the bounce in his step. If it's lacking or if it's, the way he moves, I know that he's ready or that he may be missing something that day. But everything that I know as an indicator showed me that he was going to perform well.
Wearing that green dot, that's quite an assignment, playing the middle linebacker position and communicating and making sure everybody's on the same page. What makes Tatum uniquely qualified to wear that green dot at the NFL level?
Like I said, Tatum is a very cerebral player. He breaks down things. He looks at it from a coach's lens. We've always had a conversation about seeing things through the eyes of your coordinator. If you're going to be the guy that calls the plays, you have to see things the way they see it so that you can envision it when they make that play call. You know what his intended purpose is. So that's the way he prepares. That's the way he's always prepared. And hopefully, this will be a continuation moving forward.
Yeah, as a person with your coaching background, when you watch the San Francisco 49ers team and you see the level of really star players, including Nick Bosa, who's been injured, and you see the backups step in and play the way they have, including your son, what does that tell you about this team right now, the 49ers? They're 5-2 after 7 games.
Well, it tells you a lot about their process. They're going in and they're doing their due diligence on the players that they're bringing into camp. They're bringing in people as depth pieces that can potentially be starters in other organizations, and that's a testament to that's a great accomplishment in their process. So I have a lot of respect for them. I know when we got drafted, the first thing Ms. Bosa said that this was an outstanding organization from top to bottom, and she hasn't been wrong.
I've heard Tatum described as an introvert off the field and an extrovert on the field. You think that's a fair assessment of him?
Yeah, it's definitely Jekyll and Hyde. He's not a very talkative person. We actually had to work on getting him to be able to speak in front of the cameras. Not so much just being comfortable with expressing himself. He doesn't like all the fanfare. Not a flashy guy. Just straight blue collar about his approach. But on the field, he's the kind of kid that, he'll tear his mom's head off if he has to, if she wears a different colored jersey. That's his approach.
Well, I hope you saw his press conference after the game when he stood up there at the podium. He handled himself very well, and he looked and sounded like a team leader. So I'm sure you're very proud about that.
Yeah. Very proud of him.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I was very proud of him.
Yeah. Hey, Coach Greg, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on a successful program that you've run there. And then 49er fans, I think, are forever indebted to you for supplying them with Nick Bosa and the great seasons he's had, and now Tatum Bethune, your son. So thank you very much for joining me.
Go Niners.